Hey, everybody, welcome back. Pope Leo has written a letter to the SSPX a day before they go through with their consecrations. And, wanted to briefly go through it because it's very short. Again, the consecrations are going to be tomorrow. Pope Leo has said they don't have permission to go through with the Episcopal Consecrations. So he has said those who do the consecrations and those who are consecrated, he says, will be excommunicated and in schism. And so he warns them one last time the day before consecrations. It's kind of like, 1988 with Lefebvre and the four consecrations that he had back then. It's kind of like that's just repeating itself here. So what I want to do is share my screen and we're going to take a look at it together. This was just posted on the Vatican website. You can likely see it now. Let me hold on 1 second. Let me adjust this here. Okay, felt like I was getting a little bit of feedback there. But like I said, it's a pretty short letter. Of course, now the SSPX has submitted a profession of faith, 154 paragraphs, to Pope Leo. We briefly looked at a few of those the other day in a patron-only episode. So if you want to go and see that, go ahead and become a channel member right here on YouTube or on Patreon, and you can get access to it. But we went ahead and covered that. Now, in this particular case, this is Pope Leo offering one last response. And it does come on the heels of a canonical warning already released by the Vatican through Cardinal Fernandez, canonically warning them not to go through with the consecrations. Otherwise, it will be a schismatic act and they will be automatically excommunicated. So resetting the whole situation back to how it was with 1988. Of course, Lefebvre and the four bishops he consecrated in 88, according to John Paul II, were automatically excommunicated. Later on, Pope Benedict XVI lifted the excommunication of the four bishops that were consecrated. Lefebvre had already died by then, so his excommunication just wasn't addressed. But they lifted those four excommunications, and then two of those men have died and two of them are alive, and they will be participating in the consecrations. So they will be re-excommunicated according to Pope Leo when they go through with this tomorrow. Okay, so let's see what the Pope has said here. Again, it's on the Vatican website for today. Letter of Pope Leo XIV to the Superior General of the Priestly Fraternity of St. Pius X. With paternal heart and aware of the responsibility entrusted me by the Lord as the successor of the Apostle Peter, I address you and through you the bishops, priests, seminarians, and faithful connected to the SSPX. The Church recognizes the devotion to liturgical life, commitment to priestly formation, apostolic zeal, and desire for fidelity to tradition that characterizes many people and communities connected to your fraternity. This has motivated the attentive and generous attitude that my predecessors have consistently shown to you. And by the way, I have covered that history. Go to rtcourses.com and you will see my lectures on the SSPX, the whole historical situation, just kind of looked at from an objective perspective. What exactly did Lefebvre say? What did the popes do and say? And we go through the history, we go through the theological controversies and differences between the SSPX and the Vatican. So again, check it out. It's at rtcourses.com. You'll get the full breakdown there. But he's referring to some of those interactions that previously went on. In this spirit and filled with Christian affection, I plead with you and ask you with all my heart, please turn back. I urge you to consider carefully the spiritual good of the faithful, because the schismatic act, so he's directly saying this is an act of schism, that you are about to undertake would deprive them of the licit and in some cases even valid reception of the sacrament, which they love and seek for their sanctification. So a lot going on there. Illicit just means lawful versus unlawful. Illicit means unlawful. So this is done against the law of the church. Invalid has to do with whether or not grace is actually given through the sacraments. And he's saying in some cases, not only is this illicit, that is unlawful, goes against the law of the church, but some of the sacraments will become invalid. That is, the grace won't be given. What is he referring to? Likely marriage and also confession. is what he's referencing here, because those were the cases that Pope Francis had to supplement and have special privileges to offer grace in the last decade or so. He made some special exceptions there. That is going to be now revoked according to Pope Leo XIV. So those provisions that Pope Francis gave for some situations where their marriages can be valid and where their confessions will be valid, that appears to be revoked now. And if they go through with this, they will no longer have that, according to the Pope. Right now, the SSPX argues they've always had valid sacraments, including confession and marriage. They don't need this. They don't need the Pope to acknowledge it. They already have it. But from the Pope's perspective, they don't have valid sacraments in a few cases. They still have valid Eucharist. They'll have a valid confirmation, valid baptisms. So some of the sacraments will be valid, some will be invalid from Rome's perspective. Okay, the church is open to a path of dialogue and understanding that the Holy Spirit can make possible and fruitful. So he's saying, hey, we can talk, we can have dialogue, we can have discussions. But if you know the history, the dialogue kind of got to a point where it wasn't going anywhere because Cardinal Mueller just said, look, here it is. You have to accept the Second Vatican Council. You have to accept X, Y, and Z. SSPX said, we cannot accept that. Vatican II has errors in it. You're asking us to accept a profession of faith that we think is faulty. We can't accept this. So that was pretty much it. Things fizzled out at that point, and there was no more need, I guess, in their perspective for dialogue, because the Vatican was just saying, here's the deal breakers. And SSPX was saying, well, those are deal breakers for us too. So we can't really move forward. So, if he offers here the ability to have discussions, but it doesn't appear that he's going to budge on the question of adherence to the Second Vatican Council. I mean, how could the Pope really do that? So what is the purpose of the dialogue, right? I mean, these are just fundamental differences. I guess they're meaningful insofar as the dialogue between the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church is meaningful. But there are ultimately fundamental differences there. So there's only so much that dialogue can do. I mean, you're not going to get the Orthodox to accept papal infallibility and papal supremacy. So it's only going to go so far. Well, likewise with the SSPX, dialogue is only going to go so far if Rome is saying you have to accept the Second Vatican Council, and they're saying, no, we're not going to accept it because there are some problems with it. But he does still, say, hey, open to dialogue for whatever that's worth. That's not going to change their mind. He says, I pray for you because to tear the seamless garment of Christ is a sin of extreme gravity. May the Lord enlighten your conscience and awaken your hearts with a sorrow yet hopeful heart. I feel it's my duty, though the authority received from Christ, to ask you to desist from your intended act. I entrust these intentions to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, Mother of Good Counsel. One of the things that stands out here, and I'm sure the SSPX will immediately point out, is here he's exhorting them, desist from your intended act. Very strong language. Hey, this is schismatic. Desist. Don't do this. By the authority that I have, I'm telling you, don't do it. But we don't necessarily see that same language with Pope Leo towards the German bishops. I haven't seen a letter where he tells the German bishops, desist from what you're doing by the authority that I have from Jesus and St. Peter. Don't do this. This is a schismatic act. What you're teaching is heresy. He could easily say those things, but he doesn't. Yet he does say that here for the SSPX. I'm sure they're going to feel like, well, wait, there's some inconsistency here. There's some double standards. You're saying that we're acting schismatic, but you don't say that to the German bishops. You might have some criticisms with them, but you don't address them in the same way that you do with us. And so why the inconsistency? And that actually feeds then into the SSPX, because the SSPX's grievances has to do with the church. They feel the modern church in Rome has become modernist Rome, has become very different from what they would label eternal Rome, has deviated from the truth, deviated from the path, has taught heresy, is in error, is abandoning the faith. Actually, Lefebvre at one point said, Antichrist sits on the throne of the see of St. Peter. So, you know, or antichrists, I should say, sit on the throne of Peter. I think he uses the plural. Be that as it may, they're just going to say, well, this further proves that point, right? Because there isn't this kind of guarding of the faith and discipline when it comes to German bishops or bishops who have pride masses. There wasn't this kind of stern language whenever Pope Leo allowed for LGBTQ flags to be processed into St. Peter's Basilica. He, in fact, gave it a head nod and allowed for it. He didn't tell Father James Martin in that group, absolutely not, do not do this. Rather, he allowed for it. So they're going to point out, well, hey, those things are going on. That's why we need the SSPX. That's why we're the solution, because you are wayward in Rome. You're not doing your job. So we're going to preserve the faith, even if you're not doing what you're supposed to do. Now, they do kind of give a head nod in their profession of faith to the idea that the papacy guards the deposit of faith, but there does appear to be some kind of internal tension on the question. On the one hand, they want to say the papacy guards the deposit of faith. On the other hand, they have language that indicates they believe the papacy has deviated, has gone astray, and not just in matters, of infallibility where the Pope is protected infallibly. It's not like they're saying, well, the Pope is only protected in matters of infallibility, and aside from that, he can completely go astray. No, they seem to suggest some language in their profession of faith that there's the work of the Holy Spirit is moving about even in the non-infallible pronouncements of the Pope, but at the same time, they want to say that those teachings in part are erroneous. And so there does appear to be some struggle there internally with how they understand the papacy today. On the one hand, they want to call it modernist Rome. On the other hand, they want to then say, it's guarding the deposit of faith. It's been entrusted with upholding and maintaining orthodoxy and is guided by the Holy Spirit. And so anyways, I talked about that a little bit more in the patron-only episode that I did last week, where we went through their profession of faith that they submitted to Pope Leo. So if you're interested in that, of course, become a member, go and check it out. By the way, I do have to mention to y'all, we are about 300 watch hours away from me being able to monetize the second channel. So help me out here so that I can monetize the second channel. I mean, we do have channel memberships, but as far as monetization with YouTube ads and stuff like that, help me out here. Go and binge watch a whole bunch of the videos here on this second channel, Knowledge and Wisdom, so that we can get that 300 hours, right? Because we have to get 4,000 watch hours within 365 days, right? So if we don't do that, they're going to say, okay, you've taken too long, and then we'll have to start all over. So if you want to be able to help me out in monetizing the channel, start binge watching a whole bunch of stuff here. Helps out tremendously. Anyways, like I said, become a channel member if you want to support what I'm doing on this second channel. And again, check out my course on the SSPX, where I break all the history down, all the theological debates down. We have that conversation from a perspective that really everybody would appreciate, whether you're pro SSPX, against SSPX. I think you'll benefit from it. It's at rtcourses.com, and you'll see, if you just scroll down, the course on the SSPX. Go and check it out. And of course, I will cover the situation with the consecrations tomorrow, because it will be tomorrow that the SSPX goes through with the consecrations. So make sure to, of course, hit the subscribe button and look for an update on this situation right here on Knowledge and Wisdom tomorrow. All right, see you later.